Imagine the sheer, bone-chilling terror of an 11-year-old boy waking up on a quiet Sunday morning, padding down the hallway of his own home, only to discover that everyone else in his house has been executed. His father, his mother, and 3 older brothers, all silenced forever. He is the only one left breathing. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. This is the reality for the sole survivor of what investigators are calling the Yukon Family Massacre. The story we are about to walk through today is so deeply unsettling, so profoundly tragic. It forces you to ask a question you never want to consider. Are the people you love most in this world really who they say they are? The lone survivor later told relatives, "I just wish the nightmare would end. I wish it was all a bad dream, and that we would wake up and they would still be here." From the outside, the Candy family looked like the picture-perfect postcard of American suburban life. They were a family of 6, parents and 4 boys, and to anyone passing by, they seemed to radiate normalcy. They were the kind of family you'd see at a neighborhood barbecue, the kind that waved to the mailman and kept their lawn pristine. No one ever expected that behind their front door, a darkness was brewing that would ultimately consume them. A close friend of the family recalled the frantic confusion of that morning, stating, "I had to see it for myself. I kept asking my husband to text the boys to see if anyone had heard from Lindsay or Dylan. I was calling and messaging, and the silence on the other end was just deafening. They were the all-American family next door." A neighbor later confessed to reporters, "I could live 1,000,000 years and never have predicted this. Never in my entire life." I'm still in shock, even now. Their neighbors, who saw them almost daily, never suspected the horror that was about to unfold at the end of their quiet cul-de-sac. Just a couple of years prior, the couple had been featured in a lighthearted local segment about a bakery in their town of Yukon. During the interview, they came across as a young, energetic, and happy couple. The husband, Jonathan, joked about his love for carrot cake despite his sweet tooth, while his wife laughed beside him. It's a cruel irony that these happy moments were captured on film, a stark contrast to the tragedy that would later define them. But the darkest twist in this tale isn't just that they were murdered. If a stranger had broken in, a random act of violence, it would be horrific, but perhaps in some way easier to comprehend. The community could rally against an outside monster. But that's not what happened here. The monster was already inside the house. The man who pulled the trigger, the man who ended the lives of his wife and 3 of his sons before turning the gun on himself, was the man who was supposed to protect them, Jonathan Candy. The husband, the father, the provider. He was the very person his family looked to for safety, and in the end, he was the source of their ultimate danger. A neighbor who lived across the street remembered he and his kids always seemed to get along. He was just a family man, you know, always working on something. The kids were so friendly. Everyone loved them. They'd swim in his pool, play with my dog. He was the guy who would come over and mow your lawn if you were sick, or help with anything you needed. He was just there for you. Jonathan Candy was a 42-year-old man who worked part-time at the Paycom Center, a large arena in Oklahoma City that hosts concerts and sports events. During the basketball season, he spent his time working the NBA games, particularly enjoying the home games of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Co-workers described him as a guy who brought jokes and energy to the arena floor, making the long hours more bearable for everyone. He was a graduate of Bishop McGuinness Catholic High School, and after graduating, he married his high school sweetheart, Lindsay Terry. Lindsay grew up in Prague, Oklahoma, and was known as a joyful girl in the church choir, always full of laughter. They seemed like the perfect match, the funny, goofy guy and the beautiful girl who loved to laugh. Their marriage appeared smooth and happy, even after many years and 4 sons. There were no public records of domestic disputes, no whispers of abuse. Their social media pages were filled with family photos, holiday gatherings, and proud parent moments. To anyone scrolling by, they were the embodiment of a regular, happy family. Jonathan often told friends and relatives that his children and his wife were his entire world. Then came April 22nd, 2024, a date that will forever be etched in the history of Yukon, Oklahoma. The identity of the youngest son is being protected, so we will refer to him simply as the survivor. But what we know is that this little boy stepped out of his bedroom that Monday morning, expecting a normal day. He had slept with a box fan running, its white noise masking any sounds from the rest of the house. He vaguely remembered hearing a smoke alarm go off sometime during the night, but he had simply rolled over and gone back to sleep. At around 9 a.m., he opened his door and walked into a nightmare. He found his family in a pool of blood. At 9:30 a.m., the 10-year-old boy dialed 911. His voice, calm and terrifyingly composed for a child, told the dispatcher that he had just woken up and found everyone dead. When police arrived at the home near Southwest 29th Street and Check Hall Road, they were unprepared for the carnage inside. It was a massacre. They discovered 39-year-old Lindsay Candy shot and killed. Her sons, 18-year-old Dylan, 14-year-old Ethan, and 12-year-old Lucas, were all found deceased from gunshot wounds. The suspected killer, 42-year-old Jonathan Candy, was also found dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The conclusion was immediate and brutal, a murder-suicide. But that conclusion only raised a far more disturbing question. Why? Why did this happen? The sole survivor, the youngest boy, was the one who called 911. Neighbors watched in confusion as the quiet street filled with police cruisers and ambulances, their minds unable to comprehend the scale of the tragedy next door. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling picture emerged. Jonathan Candy had apparently hunted down his wife and children room by room. 2 bodies were found upstairs, 2 downstairs. There were no signs of a struggle, suggesting the victims were taken by complete surprise, perhaps as they slept. In cases of murder-suicide, it is almost always a guarantee that everyone present is killed. The fact that the youngest was spared is a statistical anomaly. Was it a moment of hesitation? A last-second flicker of love for his youngest child? Or did something else happen that night that we will never understand? These questions may haunt the town forever, as the only person who could truly answer them is dead. The surviving child's relatives are fiercely protective of him, shielding him from the investigation to allow him to process the impossible trauma he has endured. Dr. Joni Johnston, a clinical and forensic psychologist involved in the case, stated that the scenario was unlike anything she had ever seen. The dynamic of a parent killing 3 children and sparing 1 defies typical criminal patterns. What could possibly explain that? Friends who saw Jonathan just hours before the murders said he seemed fine. He had been working at the Thunder Pelicans playoff game the night before, laughing and joking with colleagues as usual. There were no warning signs. There was no history of domestic violence, which is often a precursor to such events. As of now, the motive remains a complete mystery. All investigators know is that there may have been some kind of argument between Jonathan and Lindsay that night. But what could they have argued about that would lead him to systematically execute his family? He presented as a loving, supportive father. So, what makes a man put bullets into the people he claims to love most? One psychological profile suggests a possibility. Maybe he kills his wife in the heat of a terrible argument. It's not premeditated. He just loses control. Then, in the aftermath, reality sets in. He looks at his kids and thinks, I can't leave them to grow up knowing their father is a murderer. I can't bear for them to live with that, or to live without parents at all. And so, in a distorted, catastrophic thought process, he decides to take them with him. Investigators are currently digging into the family's financial history. Sometimes, immense financial pressure can lead to depression, particularly in men who feel the burden of providing for a family. That stress can warp thinking, leading to a feeling of hopelessness so profound that death seems like the only escape. Another avenue of investigation is Jonathan's mental health. It's possible he was suffering from a mental health challenge that he hid perfectly from everyone. The stigma surrounding mental health, especially for men, often prevents them from seeking help. Instead of expressing sadness, men often manifest depression as irritability, anger, or withdrawal. The people around them may not recognize these as signs of a deep internal crisis. They might just think the guy is having a bad week. When that help never comes, the individual can sink into a state where they lose all hope, believing the only way out is to end their own life, and sometimes, in their delusion, they take their loved ones with them to save them from a world without them. The motive is officially unknown, so for now, the case remains an open wound in the community. On Lindsay Candy's Facebook page, a childhood friend named Kami Cruz shared memories of their youth. She wrote that she and Lindsay were choir girls together, singing side by side in church. They went to school together and graduated in the same class. Cruz shared a particularly poignant memory of the two of them as young girls hiding in a treehouse and falling asleep. Their parents, unable to find them, panicked and called the police. When they were finally found, everyone had a good laugh about the fright they had caused. Lindsay was so fiercely loved by her boys, and she brought laughter to every single conversation, Cruz wrote. She was special to so many. The victims were more than just names on a police report. Dylan Candy, the firstborn, was an 18-year-old with a passion for drumming. He had graduated from Mustang High School in May of 2023 and was attending Oklahoma Baptist University to play in the Bison Brigade marching band. His band director, Brian Stackhouse, remembered him as an amazing young man with a big heart. He was a freshman, but his talent was so evident that he was immediately placed on the complex first bass drum. He was happy all the time, always friendly, Stackhouse said. He was an example to his peers on how to persevere, how to work through hard situations, and how to give your absolute best. Stackhouse recalled a core memory of Dylan during band camp. When he was told he had a solo in the drumline, he was so excited he couldn't sit still, buzzing with joy for the rest of the day. His bass drum and uniform were later set up as a memorial at the university. Ethan Candy, 14, was the second son. A ninth grader. At Mustang North Middle School, he was known as an active, athletic boy with a natural talent for baseball. His coach, T.J. Armstrong, described him as an energetic and committed player with a smile that could light up a room. He was best friends with Coach Armstrong's son, and the coach believed Ethan brought out the best in his own child. He would affectionately call him Sweet Candyman. His friends have been unable to process his loss, and a memorial bench is being planned at the Mustang Youth Sports Complex to honor the joy he brought to the field. Lucas Candy was only 12 years old. A student at Meadowbrook Intermediate, he was the youngest victim. He was the kid always seen running around during his brother's soccer practices, full of life, active, and smart. He loved to play outdoors and make new friends. The tragedy of Lucas is compounded by the fact that his life was just beginning. But perhaps the heaviest burden of all falls on the surviving brother. At just 10 years old, he must now navigate a world where his entire immediate family was erased by the man who tucked him in at night. He has no mom, no dad, no brothers. In one single night, his entire universe collapsed. He will likely grow up seeking answers that may never come. This is a burden too heavy for a 10-year-old child to carry alone. He is now in the care of extended family, and the community has rallied around him. Social workers are providing emotional and psychological support, and a GoFundMe campaign has been established to secure his future education and well-being. The outpouring of support has been overwhelming, a small beacon of light in an otherwise dark story, proving to the young survivor that he is not alone. The statement released by Jonathan's own family expressed utter confusion and devastation. They said they have so many questions that will now never have answers. Neighbors like 68-year-old Michael Burham said it's hard to believe they are gone, that he already misses seeing them. Another neighbor, Brian Graham, mentioned how handy and helpful Jonathan was, always willing to lend a tool or a hand. Ethan's coach, TJ Armstrong, chooses to remember the good, the man who was always thankful and always giving hugs. His wife, Rhonda, who knew the family for years, said she could never stop smiling when she was around them. They could make her forget a bad day at work instantly. She remembered Lindsay as the loudest cheerleader at every baseball game. They were seen as a kind, sweet, and happy family, which makes the reality of what happened so much harder to accept. Investigators are now using this tragedy as a stark warning about the importance of mental health. They emphasize that we must break the stigma surrounding seeking help. If a man who seemed so happy, so normal, could be hiding such deep pain, who else might be suffering in silence? Jonathan Candy's case is a terrifying reminder that the people who seem fine on the outside may be fighting a battle we know nothing about. We must learn to be more compassionate, to take the time to truly connect with our family and friends, and to ensure that no one is silently building up negative emotions without an outlet. Authorities have set up support groups and counseling services for anyone struggling to process this event or their own emotions. This entire story feels like a nightmare that everyone wishes they could wake up from. The Candy family, Jonathan, Lindsay, Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas, were loved by many and will be deeply missed. As the community grieves, their priority is clear: to ensure that the young survivor receives all the love and support in the world to help him navigate the impossible road ahead. We've reached the end of this heartbreaking episode here on Truth Under Tape. If you found this story compelling, make sure to stay tuned for more deep dives into the most twisted cases that haunt our world. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and like this video to help others find these important stories. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.